again, everyone. It's me, Madame Macabre, and welcome to another Facecam video. This video is a little bit special in that I have finally upgraded to a new camera, and that means that the image quality should be at least a little bit better than my old ones. I knew that my old videos, I was a little bit fuzzy. It wasn't the kind of quality I was hoping to bring you guys. So I am happy to finally have a much better quality camera for you. Anyways, without further ado, for today's video, I thought I would share yet another one of my personal paranormal experiences, since you guys seem to enjoy my pain so very much. So without further ado, let me relive my horror for your entertainment. So for today's story, this is something that, once again, both my friend Shadowkisses and I experienced together since we were best friends all the way since high school. Now, this story took place at a park that was in our old hometown, and we went to this park all the time. And honestly, for as much time as we spent there, not a whole lot of creepy stuff ever happened. However, this one event was so spooky that it actually kept us from going back to this park for, I want to say, a period of months before we finally got brave enough to go back. You see, this park in our old hometown, it is an interesting shape. The front half of the park is like an open field where like kids play soccer and stuff. There's a big playground with big toys and swing sets, and all this big open fun stuff for like walking your dog and everything. However, the back, I want to say, it's not even half. It's probably more like 1/4 and 3/4. The first fourth is that open area. It's a very big park. So you've got the smaller portion that is developed up there, and the back portion is actually all forest. So essentially there's a paved trail, tons of brush and everything, and then there's areas where you're not supposed to go in because it's like wildlife preserves and stuff. Anyway, so Shadowkisses and I like to spend a lot of time at this park hanging out. However, we liked hanging out at the park closer to nighttime. See, during the daytime it was always just packed with kids. There were moms and their toddlers. The big toy was overrun with running around, scuttling around children. So as a teenager, you're just, you know, when you're more socially, you don't want to be around the screaming gremlins, so you wait until it gets closer to dusk and they all go home for bedtime. So that's what we did. We usually would head to the park right as it was approaching dusk. Like, there would still be sunlight, but it was definitely getting close to sunset. So we'd go and we'd walk around and we'd stay until it got dark and just hang out and talk and just, you know, screw around like teenagers. We didn't get into any trouble out there. It was just mainly, I don't know, it was kind of freeing to be out in the wilderness after dark, you know? Anyway, Shadowkisses and I had hung out at this park after dark countless times. We're talking a ton. And again, nothing bad ever happened. This is actually the park where we pulled a prank on people years back, where we were in like creepypasta cosplays. We were out there, we were not up to no good. We were out there doing photo shoots, and basically some other high school kids came buzzing by, so we decided to, you know, get out of their way, back into the brush a little bit. So it was dark and they passed us, you know, and then they saw us, and well, they were a little bit spooked, but that's another story. I've already done that story time. It should be back in my backlog of story times. But anyway, so we were at the park this time for this story. So essentially, we got there getting close to dusk. It was still daylight when we first got there, and we did our normal circuit. There's multiple loops and trails you can take across this massive park, and we sort of had our pattern picked out that we like to do. And it was still a little bit of sunlight. It was getting a little closer to twilight, but we did our normal circuit, and there's this one point in the park where it's a little bit sketchy because everything in the park is great, except when you get towards the back side of it, it backs onto private property, and these are properties that have been here way since before the park was like established as a park. It used to all be private forested property, but then it essentially became a park. But there are still these really old properties on the back side of the park that way predate it, and some of them were a little bit sketchy. One in particular was really sketchy because it was in the deepest, darkest part of the woods of the park. And you knew you were there because they didn't just use, you know, a chain link fence or something to, and the standard no trespassing sign to keep us at bay. No, they just used a couple strips of like really janky, jagged looking barbed wire. And yeah, they didn't just have the no trespassing, the printed ones, they had it like scratched into metal plates. It looked like something that, you know, an 80s slasher on their little habitat would leave for you. It was not good. Well, we always tended to pick up our pace a little bit when we were passing this stretch by the creepy barbed wire property, because we didn't know what was back in there, and we didn't care to find out. The jagged, rusty, gross-looking barbed wire and the scratched, creepy stay-out signs were enough for that common sense part of our brain to go, do you like living? Don't go in there. Kitty kitty. Are you going to join me for story time? Okay. Anyways, so we are coming up on the creepy barbed wire property, and the sun is just starting to go down, but there's still a fair amount of daylight. And we spot something that had not been there before. This beast keeps trying to bump the microphone. Control, oh, okay, I guess she's gonna sit on my lap. And that is when we noticed something that we had never seen there before. See, there are some tall trees everywhere, basically. It's deep in the forest, but there were two particular trees near, like, the very entrance to this property that just added to that perfect, like, creepy vibe, in that they were just, like, old, white, dead snags, just dead, creepy trees. I mean, this looked like it was right out of a stereotypical horror movie setup, and it was not good, you guys. It was not good. So, we see these snags, and again, that's not what stood out to us, because that's always been there. But we see the snags, and what we notice is something hanging from the branches. Dolls. Creepy baby dolls. And those who know me know I don't really care for dolls all that much. So that right off the bat set off some alarm bells in my head. But the fact that made it even creepier was that they were stripped down naked baby dolls hanging like from their legs and stuff from one of the tree branches, and just like some limbs were pulled off, and they were covered in a dark reddish brown substance that looked suspiciously like blood. And again, I don't like dolls to begin with, so I saw this and I'm like, oh, no. I am not dealing with this today. We are going to get out of here. However, I didn't have time to get too freaked out because, again, I was with Shadowkisses, and as you guys have seen when we do videos together, we kind of bounce back and forth, we have banter, it's fun, and it quickly turned into just dumb jokes, and we were laughing about it, and we completed our circuit. And we sort of forgot about it. And we continued walking, and we decided, you know what? The sun has fully set, it's dark, it sounds beautiful now, we can hear all the crickets and the wildlife. Let's do one more loop before we go home, because I'm not ready to go home yet. So, we continued doing the circuit all over again, and at this point, we start getting closer to the creepy barbed wire property and the old snag trees where the baby dolls had been hanging. And now it is really dark. Mind you, we did not have any flashlights on us at this point in time, which again, it's dumb, but we were dumb high schoolers, you know? We had our cell phones, and I had like an old pocket knife in my pocket, but other than that, we were pretty ill-prepared for anything. But again, this park was one that was really safe. It's in the middle of the suburbs. There's, you know, police patrolling the roads nearby it. This is not an area where a lot of crime happens, so we didn't really have any reason to feel overly scared other than the thought of going into the creepy barbed wire property, which we weren't doing, so we didn't think we had a problem. So anyway, we walk towards the barbed wire property, and at this point, we're just like, oh boy, here come those creepy dolls again. I gotta mentally prepare myself, because it's gonna be really scary with like the faint little phone flashlight, and it's just gonna spook me. So I mentally prepared, and we go up, we round the corner to where the barbed wire property is, we see the snags, and this is where things get a little bit weird, because tonight was a night where it was pretty slow at the park. When we were doing our laps, we didn't really see any other people there. It was kind of just us out there in the woods. And the whole circuit, we're pretty fast walkers, and the circuit that we did was a small loop, so it didn't take very long to complete. But so in about 5-6 minutes redoing the small loop, we got back to the same property, and we look up to the tree, and the creepy, bloody, naked baby dolls are gone. Like, no signs of them, no limbs, nothing at all to even hint that they were there, other than the ropes that they were tied to. It's like someone had shimmied their way up and like chopped them down, but we're like, okay, who would come out and do this? We didn't see anybody else on the trails. We didn't hear anybody else. I mean, if a bunch of teenage guys wanting to scare us were gonna come out and do that, we would have heard them laughing. Like, sound traveled pretty well in that park. You could hear everything, footsteps echoing, giggles, laughter, everything, but we didn't hear anything. And mind you, again, this could have been any number of things causing this. However, being teenagers, having just seen the disturbing sight of the creepy baby dolls, doing a 5 to 6 minute lap, coming back and then being gone, but now it's pitch black, understandably, that spooked us pretty bad. So at this point, we decide we are going to power walk our heinies away from there. We're done. We're ready to go back to the car. We've had enough. Well, this is where things got weird. See, we started power walking away from the barbed wire property, just keep going down the trail quickly as we can, and finally we get a good distance away and we start to calm down a little bit, so we slow down our pace. Except at this point, it's so quiet. We realize it is so quiet. Previously, we could hear the frogs, we could hear the crickets, we could hear all the nightlife making its normal noise. But suddenly, without us realizing it while we were power walking, somehow in between, all the noise had died down. It was like complete dead silence. And that in itself was creepy enough, but it was what broke the silence that terrified us. Because we're walking, like going, what the hell is up with this silence? When suddenly, we hear bushes and branches begin to crackle, like something is moving through them. And again, mind you, this is in the middle of a pretty well-developed city. It wasn't near any other big mountains or areas for large wildlife. I mean, the craziest thing you would find in those woods is maybe a raccoon. I don't even think there's any deer out there. It's mostly just small animals. We've got like special areas for like wetland and bird wildlife. It's mostly small creatures and birds and amphibians out there. That's what we got. So the sound, the crunching, the big movements, it didn't sound like a raccoon or a jackrabbit. It did not sound like a small critter. It sounded like a very large creature moving through the brush with purpose. So at this point, we freeze and we look around. Mind you, we don't have a flashlight, it's dark, and we're like, what the heck is going on? So we're trying to find the source of the sound, and we realize it's coming from behind us, back in the direction of the creepy barbed wire property. So we're just like, no. So we start picking up the pace again, and this is when it really got freaky. Because Shadowkisses looked over her shoulder. I was like, I don't want to look back. I just want to get out of here. Shadowkisses looked over her shoulder and had to stifle a scream. And I see her reaction. I'm like, what's going on? And she's just like, there is someone following us. And at this point, I get that full body, just like, the electric shiver where you're just like, your heart starts pounding and you're like, excuse me? So I look over my shoulder, and sure enough, back a fair way behind us, but still moving in the same direction, is a dark figure. Now mind you, it is pitch black. We are in such a deep, thick part of the forest that moonlight can barely pierce through all the foliage. So all we can see is pitch black and something darker, vaguely outlined in the darkness, moving. And so we're thinking, oh, great, somebody is, stalking behind us. Let's just get out of here. But then another terrifying realization hit us. Even though it had been making sounds when it was moving through the brush, it had eventually worked its way on to the paved trail coming along behind us. Now, on the paved trail, you could hear Shadowkisses and my footsteps because, shoes on paved road, it clearly makes a sound. And once again, this park, sound travels very well. And for some reason, even though the brush crackling had stopped, so we knew it had moved onto the pavement, we didn't hear any other sets of footsteps. Nothing. Silence. Complete silence. Not the sound of breathing, not the sound of feet hitting the ground. It's even bare feet would make some sort of sound in complete darkness because there weren't even crickets at that point. It was complete and total silence. So we obviously start picking up our pace. We know that we only have a short ways to go through the thickest part of the forest, and then it reaches a clearing where the moonlight gets strong. You can start to see the road in the distance, and it's a little less freaky in the situation. So that's our goal. We're gonna power walk into the clearing so we get out of this thick forest. Well, once again, I had to fight the urge to look back over my shoulder because, again, something is clearly following you. Even if it's just matrixing with, shapes in the dark, your brain is, you can't help at that point. You want to look back and make sure it's not getting too close. And the more I looked at it, the weirder and creepier it seemed. Mind you, it was hanging back in the shadows far enough that we couldn't see fully defined shapes or features or anything. It was pitch dark, and this thing was darker, and it was the outline, very human-ish in shape. Like, you can see where a head and shoulders would be. You can see the dark silhouette of something moving. However, it was wrong. Everything about it was wrong the more you looked at it. I mean, at first when you just glance over your shoulder, you're like, that's a humanoid shape, it's a person walking, maybe it's just a creep, or maybe it's just, a dumb high school boy trying to scare you. However, that's not the case with this. Whatever it wasn't shaped right. I don't even know how to properly describe this because it was just wrong. I don't know. Like, you look at something, kind of uncanny valley, you look at it, and something in your brain triggers it as wrong. Well, in this case, it was more than just that. It was, the longer you looked at it, the more details were not right. This thing was way too tall. Like, I don't know about you, but I don't know how common it is for, 6'9", 7 foot basketball players to just, randomly take a nighttime stroll in your local park. This thing was close to 7 feet. It was enormously tall. Like, the more we looked, it was not a normal height. It was very tall, and on top of that, it was bizarrely skinny. So it was almost like if you were to take a person and use a transform tool on them and just stretch them, where they don't get any wider, they just get taller. So it was very skinny and very tall, and the way it moved, the way it moved was not right. It was very clearly doing the movements of walking, but it wasn't normal walking. It was very jagged and jittery. I don't even know how to recreate that movement. It was just imagine somebody walking like a video game walk cycle, but it's glitchy and jagged in the way it moves, but just a dark silhouette in the darkness coming towards you, not making any sound, no footsteps, no breathing, nothing. And at this point, you're certain it's not matrixing because you can clearly see it moving around. Usually when it's matrixing, you're seeing a still shape or something. I don't know, maybe you can think you're seeing an apparition or something, but it followed us for a good while. We both saw it, and the fact is it moved. It wasn't just in one place, it was moving. So I don't know. It could very well have literally just been matrixing shapes in the dark. I'm totally open to whatever scientific explanation could explain what exactly this phenomenon was. However, in that moment, it was genuinely terrifying, and we didn't know what the heck was going on. Because on top of the matrixing, it made sounds in the bushes, so I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know what it was. However, it was a very tall, very slim, dark figure following behind us, not making any sound, and it followed us for a long, long time. All the way from the creepy barbed wire property. It was all the way around the park, all the way up to the clearing. Now mind you, we were practically jogging at this point. We didn't want to break into a dead run because we're just like, we don't know what this is. We don't know if it's some kind of animal. We don't know if it's a person. If we run, will that just trigger it to chase us? So we just stuck with a steady power walk, and eventually, thankfully, the clearing opened up ahead. Now at this point, we really put the pedal to the metal and we skadoodled on out of there as fast as we could. And we finally broke through the main part of the trees into the clearing, and it was just like the moonlight flooded in. It felt like it was a super well-lit room. We were just so happy to be in the light. And at this point, we turned around and looked, and it was not following us anymore. So we see this dark figure. It's still in the shadows, but it stopped as far as the thick shadows go. It's like it didn't want to come any farther where more clarity could be shown onto it. And at that point, we realized it stopped following us. So we're like, okay, cool. And we essentially broke into a run all the way back to my car, and we took off out of there, having no idea what the hell had just happened, and just being glad we had gotten out of that. Now I know some of you are thinking, why didn't you just shine your flashlight on it? And honestly, in the moment, we were more preoccupied with getting away from whatever it was, but at the same time, part of me didn't want to see what it was, you know? It's like sometimes it's better off just not knowing. And though part of me is curious, the other part of me is like, what if I saw something I really didn't want to see? What if shining the light on it caused something bad to happen? It caused a reaction? And I don't know. So that, if you're wondering why we didn't turn on the flashlight, it's a combination of things. We weren't thinking of it for one, and even to this day, I don't really regret not trying to turn a light on whatever it was, because I don't want to know. I don't want to have seen it, because whatever it was not shaped normally, and I just, I'll spare my mind that knowledge, you know? So anyway, that was our creepy experience at the park. So, did you guys enjoy this story? Do you have any similar experiences with something really tall and skinny and dark, like in the woods at night, anywhere dark? Have you experienced something like this, or do you know what it is? Do you know how to debunk it? Do you know how to give us peace of mind that it was just something that we didn't understand and was freaking us out? Either way, feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this story time, please consider leaving a like, and if you're new here and would like more creepy content, I upload every Monday and Friday, so I invite you to subscribe. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. That's all for now. Bye-bye.